And a lot of it was vindictive in tone, I mean, nasty in tone. There was sexually oriented material or accusations of vulgar is the only way, to really describe it.
One of the best ways I have of finding stories to cover as of late seems to be the Unresolved Mysteries subreddit. While it's populated with anomalies from all around the world, a post from about 2 years ago happened to catch my eye while I was doing research for the Dennis Martin video. Reddit user RobinWarder1 posted a full summary of an incident called Circleville Letters. In it, they described one of the most bizarre cases of deceit, stalking, and murder attempts that I have ever seen. This sent me down a huge rabbit hole and on a hunt to piece together the full story using articles and photos from the case. For your viewing pleasure, of course. My name is Phantom, and today we're going to look into one question. Who is the Circleville writer? March 21st, 1977 is the date that local bus driver Mary Gillespie would receive a letter marked from Columbus. The letter had no return address and read as follows.
Stay away from Massey. Don't lie when questioned about knowing him. I know where you live. I've been observing your house and know you have children. This is no joke. Please take it serious. Everyone concerned has been notified, and everything will be over soon.
Mary would disregard the letter, thinking it was just a joke from one of the neighbors. After all, Circleville is a small town of about 28 miles from Columbus, with around 13,000 people living there today. Little did Mary know, this would start a chain reaction that would ravage her life over the coming years. She received more letters, threatening her and her family, but she kept them hidden. It was only when her husband Ron was sent one that she mentioned them. The letter that Ron received stated that Mary was having an affair with the school superintendent at the time, Gordon Massey, and that if he didn't stop it, his life would be in danger. Mary swore to Ron that she was not having an affair, and they tried their best to ignore the letters. That was until Ron received an updated threat.
Gillespie, you've had 2 weeks and done nothing. Admit the truth and inform the school board. If not, I will broadcast it on CBS, posters, signs, and billboards until the truth comes out.
Being as scared as they were, and to be fair, I don't blame them, they supposedly confided in 3 people. Ron's sister, her husband Paul Fresher, and Paul's sister. They all had an idea about who could be sending the letters, and they decided to have Paul write letters to the suspect, claiming that the Gillespies knew who they were. It seemed to have worked, and everything went quiet for several weeks. Unfortunately, the quiet wouldn't last. Ron received a call on August 19th in 1977. The caller claimed to be the Circleville writer, and Ron supposedly recognized the voice. Even though he was told by the writer that they were watching his truck, Ron grabbed his gun and left. A few minutes later, Ron Gillespie's truck was found wrapped around a tree. He was dead at the scene. After some research, investigators had found that Ron had shot at least 1 round from his gun before the crash. At what, however, was never discovered. Sheriff Dwight Radcliffe questioned a suspect but released him after they had passed a polygraph test. Radcliffe's deduction was that there had been foul play in the case, but after discovering Ron Gillespie's blood alcohol level was 0.16, ruled the death a drunk driving accident. This completely differs from Ron's family, who had mentioned he didn't even have a single drink that day. After Ron's death, Superintendent Massey and Mary Gillespie had acknowledged that they had begun a relationship, but it was claimed that they didn't start one until after the letters were sent. Whatever you need to tell yourself, guys. I don't think anybody's buying that.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy so let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
In February of 1983, Mary was driving her normal bus route when she saw a sign on the road. The writer had decided to make good on their promise and began placing harassing signs all around her bus route. She decided she had enough and decided to rip the sign down, only to discover something disturbing. The sign had been booby-trapped with a box. Inside the box was a small pistol that, if the sign was pulled down in a different way, would have fired directly at her. Authorities had discovered that the serial number had been ground off partially, but was able to be recovered and traced. The gun owner was identified to be Mary's brother-in-law, Paul Fresher. He had recently divorced Ron's sister and claimed that the gun had been stolen for a while. Officers asked to see where he kept his gun and also tested his handwriting by making him copy the letters sent to the townspeople. Multiple other citizens had been reporting getting these letters as well, so they wanted to make sure all their bases were covered. After the tests, Paul was convicted of attempted murder, and even though he was never charged with writing the Circleville letters themselves, they were used against him in the case. He received a 24-year sentence with a possibility of parole. The strangest part of his sentence was that he would receive a letter being taunted by the writer themselves, and many others still kept receiving letters from Columbus. This letter would read,
Fresher, now when are you going to believe you aren't getting out of there? I told you 2 years ago when we set them up, they stay set up. Don't you listen at all? No one wants you out. No one. The joke is on you. Tell no one of this letter. I saw the paper. Great news, great. The sheriff loved it. Do you believe it now? Do you?
The strangest thing about receiving the letter, though, was Paul was locked in solitary confinement in a different town. There was no possible way he could have sent the letters himself. He was even denied parole in 1990 because of the letters still being sent, but there was no evidence suggesting that he was the one behind it. He was eventually paroled in May of 1994 and continued to maintain his innocence until he passed away, unfortunately, in 2012. The TV show Unsolved Mysteries ran a special on this event, and strangely, they received their own threatening letter stating,
Forget Circleville, Chip. Do nothing to hurt Sheriff Radcliffe. If you come to Ohio, you all sickos will pay. The Circleville writer.
They of course ignored this letter, and nothing ever came of it. Strangely, new evidence had come out about the case that was never mentioned in the trial. A journalist named Martin Yant had discovered that about 20 to 30 minutes before Mary had torn down the booby trap sign, a man was seen by a passing bus driver. He obscured his face by turning around, but it was in the same spot that the sign would come to be found. Nearby him was a yellow El Camino, which is similar to the one that Paul's ex-wife's new boyfriend has. Since Paul had an airtight alibi, according to Yant, many suspect the boyfriend could have set Paul up. Not only did Paul's ex-wife and him have a terrible divorce, which saw Paul winning child custody and the house, but she had never once mentioned Paul being the writer until after immediately finding the booby trap. Martin Yant also described the new boyfriend as a tinkerer, and Paul Fresher as a mechanical klutz. How coincidental. He had also re-examined the letters and found that some of them had been signed with the moniker W. The moniker is suspected to belong to Gordon Massey's son, William. Not only that, but some of the letters circulating the town had been typed on a typewriter, and according to Yant's findings, Paul's sister had loaned Paul's ex-wife a typewriter after she had told Paul's sister he gave the okay to do so. There were also reports of the whole thing possibly starting from a man named David Longberry who worked for the school system and had a thing for Mary Gillespie. She rebuffed his advances, and he later learned that she was carrying out an affair with Gordon Massey. This probably angered him and gave him motive to start writing the letters. The letters may have continued into the 90s, and coincidentally, they stopped after Longberry was found dead from a suicide. He sexually assaulted a young girl, unfortunately, and hung himself shortly after trying to flee to Texas. So what do I put together of all this, personally? I think a post on the sitcomsonline.com forum board says it best. Forum member The Cars 1986 posted about this topic and wrote the following. I firmly believe that this whole thing started out of jealousy, with the guy who wanted to be with Mary Gillespie, who spurned his advances and hooked up with Gordon Massey instead. The coworker then took to letter writing to voice his displeasure and began to threaten people, mostly Mary and Ron Gillespie, with the intention of ending the affair, or Mary and Ron's marriage. I think Ron drank up the courage to confront this guy, and legitimately died because of an accident on his way. His family contends he wasn't a strong drinker, so for someone who isn't much of a drinker, his blood alcohol level at 0.16 would make him completely wasted. The only mystery is with the fired bullet. For all we know, Ron could have fired the weapon out of a window as he was driving out of anger, or he could have discharged it accidentally once he crashed into the tree. I then think that after Fresher and his ex-wife divorced, she used the CW's little game of leaving signs, as well as writing letters, as a way to set up Fresher as the writer to get back at him over a bitter divorce dispute. Martin Yant's description of her read as the following. She was a very, very angry, manipulative woman who was still planting negative stories about Paul in the early 90s. What was initially bizarre seems more clear now. Still a weird case, but overall, something that I feel comfortable with having a finality to it. I also firmly believe that Fresher's ex-wife wrote the El Sicko's letter to Unsolved Mysteries. Like I said, couldn't have said it better myself. This rabbit hole has been one of my favorite topics to dive headfirst into and explore with you guys. No matter what you think of this being a plot to frame someone, or a stalker case gone wrong, you can't help but look at all the evidence and wonder what really happened to these people. I hope you all enjoyed the ride as well. Be sure to leave me a comment below telling me who you think the Circleville writer is, and what some of your theories are. With that said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Remember that you're loved, and good night.